AM 1220. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. And as we have been saying for the last 3 Wednesdays in a row, it is raining again in Southern California. Rainy days and Wednesdays always make me cry, but of course if you're pop culturally savvy, you understand that it's rainy days and Mondays. But it's Wednesday. But again, thank you very much for tuning in today. And just a quick shameless plug before we go on with our show today. If you are looking for a school that will educate your kids instead of indoctrinating your kids, then give Lighthouse Christian Academy a call and ask for Christine. She is our school administrator, and Lord willing, she'll be a blessing to you. Also, just a quick shameless plug again, if you're looking for a church that is traditional, a church that is Bible-believing, and a church where woke Christianity goes to die, then give Freedom's Way Baptist Church a visit this Sunday. You can find our church and our school on the web at freedomswaybaptistchurch.com. That's freedoms with an S, freedomswaybaptistchurch.com. Soon to be .org if you're all wondering why does it say .com. That's a topic for another day, but we'll be .org very, very soon, probably by the end of this week. Last Wednesday, we had the great opportunity of having Suzette Valadares, former state assemblywoman for the now 40th District, in studios with us. Next Wednesday, a week from today, we're going to have Valerie Bradford with the Santa Clarita chapter of the NAACP. It will be a respectful yet spirited discussion concerning all things racism and where Christianity can be a blessing in that area. In fact, I think Christianity is the answer to all of those things. And so next week, please tune in as we have, again, a respectful yet very spirited discussion with the Santa Clarita chapter president of the NAACP, Valerie Bradford. In studio today, we have former state senator and former state assemblyman Mike Morrell. Mike lives with his wife Joni in Rancho Cucamonga, a wonderful part of Southern California. Mike also serves on the advisory board to the Pacific Justice Institute with our friend Brad Dacus. Mike Morrell, thanks for coming on to Politics and the Pulpit. Say hello to the folks out there.
Hello, folks. It's good to be here. In fact, it's good to be out of Sacramento and in a room full of people who are normal, with a normal audience. So thank you for having me on.
I had the pleasure of meeting Senator Morrell a couple of years ago in the spring. He was briefly speaking at the Lighthouse Baptist Church there with Pastor Jerry Scheidbach, mutual friend of ours. And at that time, you were kind of musing a run for governor during the whole Newsom recall. But since then, you've had hip replacement and all kinds of things happen to you.
Yeah, one of our boys got hit by a car, so I figured we had to help him rehab for about 4 months. So the timing for running for governor proved not to be God's timing.
No doubt about it. Tell us a little bit about your tenure in the House here in California.
How I ended up in...
Yeah, how'd you end up in Sacramento?
Well, I attribute a lot of it to the 7 years I spent in high school, in California. That's a joke, sorry. But obviously not a very good joke.
No, obviously. I didn't hear any rum.
Yeah. Years ago, I had became a Christian, and I read the 7 deadly sins, slothfulness maybe being the most deadliest sin,
sure.
Meaning a person who doesn't take time to think how they ended up here on earth and for what purpose God has established them for. So I thought that through, and when I had my first couple of kids, I think God gave me a scripture that Solomon said that it's a duty of a father to leave an inheritance to his children's children. So everything I tried to do in life, I tried to benefit them in that area. So I did open a couple of businesses, a mortgage company, real estate company, and then I started a few different ministries, many of them exercising your civic responsibility, trying to get into churches, and I spoke on finances to churches as well as politics.
Yeah.
And then eventually I knew that I had to get my business running even better so I could get away and campaign and have enough money to do that. And all that worked out for me. And then when our youngest, Matthew, went away to college, to Hillsdale College, I ran. And I ended up in the state assembly. And I'm just trying to do my duty to God and country, trying to make California a better place.
Yep.
I got to have a neat conversation with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas a few years ago, because our son used to clerk for him, and so he said, "So Senator Morrell, since you've been in the Senate, have things gotten better or worse in California?" And I said, "They've gotten worse." And he said, "Oh, so it's your fault." So anyway, the point is I've done what I tried to do, but yeah, California's been even tougher. Seems like we're going more to the left, and I don't mean just to the left in the way we said that 20 years ago. I mean more towards socialism and even a Marxist rhetoric that they have. So it's been a difficult place, but I'm grateful for God. I had a lot of opportunities to speak to thousands of people, thousands of pastors around California and throughout the United States. So I tried to do the best I could in a very difficult state.
Yeah. Well, obviously you're one of the bright spots here in California, especially during your time in office here in California. And, we can't really point to very many of them now, even though there are a handful of them. But Senator Burrell, could you just talk to the folks and explain how you came to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ?
Yeah, first of all, I had no really, or I should say little religious upbringing. We didn't own a Bible, and so my dad did take me to church when I was younger, to a Catholic church, but after that, there was no thing put on me that I had to go to church.
Sure.
And so then alcohol, my parents struggled with alcohol. Good parents in some ways, in other ways they had some challenges. So that became one of my vices as a young age. I was probably an alcoholic by 20 years old.
Wow.
And so by 21, I remember contemplating, I wonder if there is a God, and if there is, I think I'm in trouble, because I couldn't do anything right.
Sure.
I just couldn't do anything right with friends or people and relationships, and getting in a little bit of trouble. And so I was invited to go to hear a professional, a young lady invited me to hear a professional football player speak, and she wanted to know if I wanted to go. I felt I was tricked because when I got there, he was a pastor.
Oh.
But that's okay, because I don't remember the words that he said, but what he was saying, I think God's Spirit was speaking to me.
Yeah.
And I went home that night, and I think I grunted, and that must have been my cry out to God.
Yeah.
Because after that, things started happening, and then Pastor Ray, who spoke that night, started discipling me and mentoring me, and remind me that faith comes by hearing, and hearing comes by the Word of God.
Yeah.
And so I got into the Word, probably not as much as I should have, but in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, way more significant than when you were 19, obviously.
Way more significant. Yeah, it saved my life. It got me a good wife. We did our best to raise our kids according to the advice in scriptures, particularly Proverbs.
Yeah.
A lot of wisdom in Proverbs. Right?
A lot of wisdom.
So,
wish a lot of our parents, even in the Christian churches, would take their P's and Q's from Solomon and others, as opposed to Dr. Phil. Even though Dr. Phil sometimes can say a
and
trip
Dr.
on a
Ost.
truth. Exactly.
And Oprah. You don't want to forget Oprah.
I don't want to forget her either. I might win a new car on that one. You never know.
Yeah, and one thing that a guy taught me, and he could see I struggled in school. My parents, a lot of parents say we want you to be the first to graduate from college. My parents wanted me to be the first in our family to graduate from high school, so the bar wasn't set very high. So I had an older gentleman in church I think knew that I struggled intellectually, and he said, there's got a suggestion for you. And I didn't take it serious at first, but he said there's 31 days in a month typically, and there's 31 chapters of Proverbs, it's a book of wisdom.
Yep.
And he said, so if today's the 14th, you read Proverbs 14, do that for at least the next 2 years, if not the rest of your life. And I actually started doing it and saw the wisdom in how to raise kids, how to be married. But the thing that I took to the most is I remember underlining over 100 scriptures on how to make money. So, that's a little...
You're a health and wealth guy now.
Health and wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm not health and wealth.
I'm just
living.
That was a little joke, Senator Morrell.
That was a little joke. But it was on me. But anyway,
Yeah.
But no, but a lot of wisdom in that, and so and that's where the scripture comes from. When I was praying, God, what's my purpose here in life? And when God first gave me that verse about leaving inheritance to our children, I thought that's not a very big lift. If I leave them each $100, but I found out that scripture means more than that. And
Sure.
I took it to mean, we want to leave them religious freedom. We want to give them the opportunity for property rights and to not be governed by, an overhanded, heavy-handed government, but to have freedom. And so that's how I end up in politics, was that scripture. What can I do for my kids? So even before I ran, I got involved with politics, with the Republican Club. I was on the advisory business board for Senator Bill Leonard, as well as Assemblyman Fred Aguirre. And then I got involved with many other things. And then it just sort of fizzled in one day that Matt went away to college, and felt like God says, hey, are you going to do this or not? And so I ran, and I ended up in the state legislature.
And it's been, that's been 15 years, right?
Well, I was in it for 10 years, and I termed out 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 12 years ago. But I started running 2 years before the election, because where you lack in money, you need to make up in time by knocking doors and making relationships, with which a lot of people want to run for politics. They get in at the last 6 months and they think they're going to win.
Yeah, exactly. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to former State Senator Mike Morrell, and we were talking a little bit about his faith in Jesus Christ here. And one of my men from church was up in Sacramento a couple weeks ago and met Senator Morrell. And I guess met him in connection with something called the Salt and Light Council, which I get constant emails for. Explain a little bit, Senator Morrell, what the Salt and Light Council is, what your involvement is, and how pastors and other Christians need to get involved in that way.
Well, I'll express it this way. In life, we probably all heard this saying. There's two things we shouldn't talk about, is religion and politics.
Two of my favorite subjects.
But if you have a casual study of the last 5,000 years of history, the two ways men seem to oppress other men and either send them into 1,000 years of bondage or set them free are through those two things, religion and politics.
Yeah.
George Washington was asked why America's success. He worded it this way. Actually, he worded it in the same way. He said it's the first time in all of human history that the best of Jerusalem intersected with Athens, meaning faith and politics.
Faith and politics.
Yeah. And so the thing is, those are the two most important things to get involved in. And so being a Christian, we have to exercise our civic responsibility, because remember, politics goes beyond politics, but everything affects us. I mean, think about all the bills right here in Sacramento that are immoral.
Yeah.
Scotty Wiener from the senator.
And absolutely no irony at all.
Irony at all, yeah.
Yeah.
And Sacramento had a bill where men, I think it was 25, could have sex with a young boy as young as 14. And then now you have all these drag queen hours. So, I mean, don't get involved with politics, but get involved fighting for your kids against immorality. A lot of these young parents are returning to the school boards because they want their kids to learn. Two words, to learn. They don't want them having drag queen hours.
Yeah.
They want, especially since California rates like number 44 in math and 43 in science.
Yeah.
I mean, we are slipping down the road there to almost a third world nation. In other
words, educate our kids, don't indoctrinate our kids.
No, yeah, absolutely. And so, parents should get involved. That's politically, but the thing is, if you don't want to call it politics, go to your school board meeting and fight for your kids to learn and to get this immorality and this indoctrination out of the way. And it's the same thing with things like, life created in an image of God. Little innocent babies, for an example, The other side used to like to say that if we're not for abortion, we have a war on women. But the thing is, they have a war against babies.
Sure.
And so we have to fight. The Bible tells us innocent blood shed cries out from the ground for justice. And I believe that. And my concern is going to come a point in time where perhaps the Almighty is going to say, okay, if the Christians haven't stopped this yet, I need to come in and take care of that. Because if you ever get a chance to read Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, he talks about the same thing, that when's the war going to be over, this civil war. And his point is, once every drop of blood from the lash has been replaced by another blood pulled from the sword, it'll be over. Why? Because just as it was said 3,000 years ago, the same can be said today, that the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. So with that said, it's interesting, he sort of points a finger at who he thinks the people are who are to blame for this.
Yeah.
And some of the people he points a finger at are those people who pray to the same God, read from the same Bible, and ascribe to a faith in the living God. So I think what he's saying is, where were you during these slavery days? And so the same thing can be said today about these issues on life. And so that's what the Salt Ministry do, is we're trying to get pastors involved and people in churches to get involved in the political process. But if not in the political process, trying to protect our kids at the schools, not for indoctrination, but education, and at the same time, speak out or speak for traditional morality.
Yeah.
And so we train people, and then we get involved with the church, and then we try to make disciples to get other people involved. We're also trying to restore those political principles, the limited constitutional government, which contains the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Great Northwest Ordinances. So we know, because remember, we're supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people.
Yeah.
That's why the Constitution says we the people. So the founders wouldn't blame the politicians for the problems. They'd blame the people.
The people.
Because it was up to us to exercise their civic responsibility and vote in people who are going to represent our interests. So those are the things we're trying to train people on in Salt and Light, and we're trying to instill within churches and then get them out of the churches and take that into the streets and change our country for future generations.
Well, I think that's admirable, and I think that's something that I've been involved in for a long time. But something you said a minute ago, Senator, you said that the left has a war against babies, and I would argue that maybe the left has a war against women as well. If you remember back in the 90s, it was the year of the woman. The left was, real big about, all these women were winning congressional seats and senatorial seats on the Democratic side. And they were all about women. Here we are 20 years later or so, and now the Democratic Party has a hard time just defining what a woman is. We've gone so far just in the last 20 years of the lives of Bill Clinton and all that. When it seemed like a more sane Democratic Party in the 1990s, whereas today they can't even define what a woman is. So it seems like not only is it a war against babies, but it's a war against
women.
Women.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point. Remember, there's been approximately 60 million abortions. Half of those are little baby girls.
Yeah,
innocent baby girls. So there is a war against women. There's a war against women right now that I see in sports and every place else where they're awarding all these trophies and the Oscars and everything else to men who now say they're women.
Yeah.
And so women are being cut out of the loose. There is a war against women right now, but it's not coming from the right or the people of faith. I mean, it's actually coming from the left. So
yeah. Well, if you're listening to Politics in the Pulpit, you're listening to Pastor Jerry Cook, who identifies as a radio host, and so we're glad that you tuned in today. We are speaking with former State Senator Mike Morrell, and we're going to ask him a little bit about separation of church and state when we come back here in a little bit. Also, the senator has written a book called The Road to Restoring the Family, and towards the end of the program, we're going to ask him a little bit about that and give him an opportunity for a shameless plug on that book. And so you are again listening to your hometown station here on 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We'll see you back in just a moment. All right, we're back here live on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is your holy host, the pastor of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church here in Santa Clarita, Jerry Cook. And we are speaking to former State Senator Mike Morrell, who has represented our state admirably for well over a decade and is now residing here in Southern California, which of course is a good thing because he has not turned yellow and vacated our state like most people have, but we'll talk about that in just a second. We were talking a little bit about his faith in Jesus Christ and also his function and role with the Salt and Light Council. But I wanted to ask the Senator what your understanding or what you think the founders' understanding is of separation of church and state. What does Mike Morrell say about that?
They believed in that, but only in one direction, and it's in one of the First Amendments. So remember, the whole thing they were fighting from was to get away from the tyranny of the king in England.
Yeah.
And if you go back for most of history, traditionally, we didn't have religious freedom.
Sure.
At the very best, you usually adopted the religion of the king. So if you were born in Germany, you would have been a Lutheran,
Yep.
right? And so that was one of the things we were fighting for. So what they essentially mean by that, and it's pretty specific, but of course people on the other side of the aisle has used it against us and has misinterpreted it. But if you just read it for what it is, it means that we do not want government interfering with our religion.
Yeah.
But we, the people, are allowed to be involved with expressing our votes and our opinions in politics. So it's only a one-way thing. We can get involved with politics. They cannot usurp our authority and kick us out of politics.
Yeah, we did not want the Anglican Church in America.
And by the way, in 1954, Lyndon Johnson, I think, got mad at the Baptists, one of you guys, because
one of our guys.
One of our guys, because they didn't like he didn't like what they did. So he did this thing where he called it the separation of church and state. And a lot of pastors have ran from being involved with politics. But that particular bill just only stated that a pastor cannot officially endorse a candidate from the pulpit.
And you're talking about the Johnson Amendment.
The Johnson Amendment, yeah. Sorry, I thought I said that. But anyway, we can get involved in politics. A pastor can talk about politics, be involved in politics from the pulpit, but the only consideration on that bill is they weren't supposed to endorse from the pulpit. However, my pastor has endorsed from the pulpit. He even sent that into the IRS and said, make my day, you know, trying to get a case. But I also had another pastor.
I didn't know your pastor was Dirty Harry.
Yeah, it is.
That's good.
He is Dirty Harry. I had another pastor. So, by the way, this guy's a Baptist pastor, too, who did this. He had me up in front when I was running for the Senate, and he said, because of the Johnson Amendment, I cannot endorse candidates. But if I could, I would endorse Mike Morrell for the California Senate.
That's a nice backhanded way of endorsing you.
But since I can't endorse Mike Morrell today, at least we can pray for Mike Morrell. And maybe you guys can pray, since I can't endorse him, and that maybe you can pray that he will win. So, you know, there's ways around it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so pastors should not be afraid because, again, we mentioned earlier, the two things people are afraid to talk about is politics and religion. The two most important things to talk about are those two things. And I want to mention something on that line. People ask me, what can I do? What can I do and be involved? I think the number one most important thing is we need to talk. You know, this politically correct speech is just to shut us up. But here's what it means. They know they cannot win the argument, and so that's why they want to shut us up and blame us and accuse us and blame us. But all throughout history, your greatest statesmen as well as your pastors, they had a few things in common. Number one, when you think about Churchill or Lincoln, they took on the most difficult issues of their day, and they were not afraid to talk about those things.
Yeah.
We have to take on the most difficult issues of our day. We have to speak out. And the Bible does say use wisdom, you know, when we use our words, but it also says that we're to demolish arguments, and we're also, I like these next two words, tear down every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And the thing is I'm convinced we have to speak out, and we have to be bold when we speak out, because every word of God's is true and correct. And when I've done that in my life, God has opened a tremendous amount of doors in a positive way for me. I've had, you know, a lot of flack come back to me, but overall, God has blessed that, and it continues to open more doors for me the more that I'm bold with His truth.
Yeah. It's interesting that the phrase separation of church and state, or the wall of separation of church and state, which was lifted from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson, president at the time, to the Danbury Baptist Association, that has been lifted, extracted from the context of that letter. And what's interesting is I like to tell the folks who religiously like to use that as their dogma for, you know, keeping Christians out of the public square, I like to say, do you know where Thomas Jefferson went to church the very next Sunday after that letter was drafted? And of course, none of them know because they're not interested in reading this. But he actually went to church on federal property where his friend and mentor, Pastor John Leland, was preaching on federal property. I think that letter was drafted on a Friday, 1801, 1802, right around there. And that very next Sunday, he was in a church service on federal property. And what's interesting is if Jefferson meant what the left is saying about separation of church and state, or the wall of separation of church and state, then obviously he contradicted his own philosophy by going to church and listening to a preacher on government property. Yeah,
and I'm not sure. You'd have to check on the accuracy on this. I think there's only been one pastor who lost his 501c3 tax-exempt status, and I believe it was only one. And it was when Clinton was running. He took out a full-page ad using the church money on the back of USA Today.
Oh, okay.
So that was
I'd like to check that out.
Yeah.
Somebody check that out.
But other than that, no other pastors, from my understanding, have been in trouble for that. But they are going to get in trouble for that if they keep silent.
Indeed. And then I think that is one of the main problems. But
that only, by the way, silence only emboldens evil.
Indeed. So what is your take, with that said, what is your take on the involvement or non-involvement of the modern evangelical church in today's political arena? I'm assuming from our conversation already that you believe involvement is necessary.
Yeah.
But why do you think there's still a good, sizable minority of pastors that are just cowardice about this topic?
Well, I have a couple of answers to give you. I think they're cowardice. Maybe they don't trust the Word of God like they should. Proverbs says every word of God's true and correct. We don't just preach the parts that are easy listening, and like I said earlier...
like those great albums from the 60s.
Yeah, there you go. Like I said earlier, we have to preach the whole counsel of God, even those difficult parts. That's why they're there, to give people life, to give our country life. But the thing is a lot of them have gone user-friendly, seeker-sensitive, because they're going for the audience rather. I believe they're trying to please God, or man, perhaps more than they're pleasing God.
Yeah.
And so we just can't do that. But here's why. One of the reasons. Alexis de Tocqueville came here in the early 1800s by the request of the government of France to travel what was every corner of America then, which was pretty small, and write down his observations, why this prosperous nation, just overnight.
Yeah.
And so he traveled then, and he said, I searched for her greatness and her prosperity and her vast mines, her rich agriculture, and her vast harbors, and it was not there.
Yeah.
And he names all these things. He just keeps going. And then I think I found the two most important paragraphs in that whole book. It's still a classic today, Democracy in America, over 700 pages. And he said, America's great because she is good. But if America ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. And here's the last sentence. This is the key, I believe. He said, but if the pulpits are no longer aflame with righteousness, could it be that the people will no longer know the truth?
Yeah.
That's where we are today. If the pulpits are no longer aflame with righteousness, taking good and bad actions and explaining that, vices versus virtue, then the people will no longer know the truth. I believe he hit the nail on the head, and I believe that's where many of our churches are today. These people are afraid to take on the tough issues. But again, I want to go back to Lincoln and Churchill, the great statesmen. Always take on the most difficult issues of their day. That's why we have to.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that we can confidently quote a Frenchman nowadays, but obviously Alexis de Tocqueville wrote a great book, and of course those are quotable lines from Democracy in America.
Do you want me to quote Trudeau?
No, let's not quote Trudeau right now. But
get carried away, huh?
No, we don't do that. But it's very clear that we should be more involved than less involved. And let me ask you this question, too, because, you're a California native. You were born and bred here in the state of California. I'm bred here in the state of California. I have no plans to leave our gorgeous state. I think our state is a beautiful state in a lot of ways, resource-wise, weather-wise, even though technically it's been raining, every other day for the last 5 months practically. But I love this state.
Yeah.
Can California, in Senator Mike Morell's opinion, can California ever recover from the damage caused?
Yeah, I think we got a lot of problems. I think we're in trouble here in California and America. I'm going to predict, I'm not a prophet, but there's rough seas ahead.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to fight for our country and for our kids and for the next generation. And I don't mean that like on
metaphorically.
Metaphorically, like January 6th. I don't want to get arrested. Who's those guys coming through the door with?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm glad you put your Viking helmet on the outside of the studio here.
Yeah, but I mean, where we advocate and that sort of thing. But here's my point I'm trying to make. I do think there's hope, but I think we're going to have some rough seas ahead. Mm-hmm. But here's why I haven't left California. Number one, born and raised here, still things I love about my state. I'm praying, asking God, do you want me to move? Can I move? Hurry up and let me move. But he has us here for a reason, right? Yeah. And so it's a beautiful state. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer, many of you heard of him. He used to be a pastor, and he was in seminary in New York City when World War II broke out. And he went back to Germany to fight against Hitler because he said he believed believe Christians should be where the flames are the hottest. Where's the hottest flames at in the United States?
California.
Right now? California. So I don't have my U-Haul hooked up yet, but I think we're here. If you're still here, it's probably for a purpose. But let me read a couple of things here that I wrote down for you today. We have a wonderful heritage. Think about this. California is the first state with 21 missions. World Vision, Focus on the Family, Campus Crusade for Christ was founded here. Right here up in San Bernardino Mountains at Forest Homes Christian Conference Center, there's a plaque up there.
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, when he was a young man, God had called him to preach the gospel. And then the city of Sacramento, when I was up there, means the city of sacraments. Think of how beautiful that is. Holy Communion, holy matrimony, and the list of things go
Holy
on.
moly.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
And Joni and I were on Highway 1 recently up in Santa Barbara, and it says El Camino Real, the Highway of the King. So at one time, this was God's state.
Yeah.
I am convinced that he wants his state back. He wants his country back, but it's up to his people to get it back. And that goes back to 2 Chronicles, that we have to turn.
My people.
If my people do the things that we need to do. There's a second thing in there, too, that we have to read the Word of God and get that into our lives, because faith comes by hearing, hearing comes by the Word of God, so we have to pray. And then one other thing, too, I just read that in Hosea. For years, my people are being destroyed for their lack of knowledge, their lack of biblical knowledge. But the second part of that verse, I ignored. I just picked it up a couple of weeks ago. It says, and if you ignore my laws, I will ignore your children. And so we don't want our children. We've got to get back in the Word of God. We've got to pray for our country. We've got to get involved in civic responsibility. And then the next thing we have to do that's going to save a country, the very first thing God did, he ordained before he did government, was he ordained the family.
Yeah.
And it is proven that solid families come from a father and a mother staying in a house, not getting a divorce. And so a strong family will make for a strong America. Yeah. So the third thing would be to shamelessly talk about my book, The Road Back to Restoring the Family.
Which we're going to get to. Which we're going to get to.
Which it won't be out for another 30 days. But
which we're going to get to. By the way, I think you've basically already done this, but just make a case for why people should stay and fight here in California rather than flee like over 500,000 have done.
Okay, so that's a good question. And number one, because our rich heritage. Number two, we do, other than the past few months, have the greatest weather. I mean, there's so many great aspects of California. But here's what I don't understand. Why do the Christians run from the battle?
Because they haven't been listening to Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah. We should be, I was taught by people who know how to vest is when there's a fire, when everybody's running away from it, you want to run into it. When the economy's bad is when you want to buy, and when the economy's good is when you want to sell. Yeah. And so I think the thing is, same thing with California. It is tough, but no guts, no glory. And I forgot, there was an author who wrote something one time that says what men need, and I think this goes for anybody, women, that we need a beauty to rescue and a cause to die for. Yeah. And so I think, or a cause to live for. You can say that either way you want. But I don't know why we're letting people push us out. Yeah. We don't want to push people out. No. But we want to restore California. So I think, it is a good fight here. There's a lot of opportunities here that I get all the time to speak, and I just feel like it's just been a blessing of God. There's a lot of hungry people out there that want to know what direction should I go now. And so for right now, we're staying.
Well, I appreciate that, and as a pastor, I'm staying too, and in the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of people leave our state, just specifically from my own congregation. And no matter how hard I preach, people are always looking at Idaho, Arizona, Wyoming, other states like that. But when we come back here, we're talking to former state senator Mike Morell. He has written a book that is going to be out here in about a month or so called The Road to Restoring the Family. When we come back on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll ask him about this book, what inspired him to write this book, and some of the content that might be in it that might help you as well when we come back here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. All right, we're back live here on Politics in the Pulpit with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. We are speaking to former State Senator Mike Morell, and we have learned some great things about Senator Morell. We learned that he's a California native. We learned that he's involved with Salt and Light Council. We know that he's a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. We know he understands what separation of church and state is and what it isn't. And we know that Senator Morell wants more pastors and more Christians in general to get more involved in the political or the civic arena. And we also found out that the senator has no plans to leave California unless, of course, he's like a Jonah and God plagues him with a whale to swallow you up. But hopefully that does not happen. Even though you did tell me you have a house in another state, so that means that you're always tempted to vacillate. Isn't that right?
The only thing is we've had that house for 17 years, and we bought it before we even considered anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And our daughter lives over there now.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So I wanted to quickly pursue, before we get into your book, The Road to Restoring the Family. Senator Mike, do you have any aspirations for, right now you're not in office, but do you ever think about getting back into politics?
Yeah, and I word it this way: wherever God wills, I would love to get back into politics. I've got to consider the wife. I've got to consider my family.
Yeah.
We have kids and grandkids. We have 8 grandkids now, with 1 in escrow, and so we want to see those kids. But if God was to open the doors for something for me to run, like maybe a U.S. Senate seat or even a governor, I would consider that. But I'd have to also calculate to see realistically what are my chances. Is the tide turning towards a free government and prosperity and freedom and republicanism? So have to take a lot of those things into an account. But for right now, I'm just doing the best that I can. I am speaking around the state on civic responsibility. And
if folks wanted to get a hold of Senator Mike Morell to speak at their church or their group or their function, how would they do that?
Let me give you my email number, or my email. It's P as in Paul, RHL. Let me repeat that, PRHL at AOL.com. Or feel free and text me or call me at 909-938-1138. No crank calls, though.
The former senator just gave you his cell number right on air.
Right on air. Yeah.
You're going to get a bunch of crank calls.
Probably
the first one from Andrew Delgado, right here.
I would have pegged it would be you.
No, it wouldn't be me. I'll just go ahead and give you a little black thumbs up, so it'll be a lot of fun. You have been led to write a book called The Road to Restoring the Family. It's due out in about 40 days or so. Tell us a little bit about, in a brief synopsis, of The Road to Restoring the Family, Senator
Yeah,
Brown.
I thought about, since I'm out of the Senate, what do I do next? And I thought, now that with these kids and these grandkids, what man leaves, I need to leave an inheritance to them. So I thought, what could I write to them? So it's kind of a love letter to my kids on sort of the 12 things that I think they need to have a prosperous life. And when I mean prosper, I want them to prosper intellectually, spiritually, morally, financially, emotionally, and educationally, and civic responsibility, politically, right?
Yep.
And so I put my best foot forward. I wrote this borrowed from the phrase from the Declaration, the laws of nature, and nature's God, which means you can find self-evident truth in history, standing on the shoulders of people who possess a superior wisdom than me. So I went back and studied on every different subject, what guys like Aristotle thought, St. Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, C.S. Lewis, Lincoln, Washington, and a host of others. So I used those people to make my case, and then of course I brought back in the laws of nature, meaning or God's laws, right?
Yeah.
And so I wrapped it in scriptures to try to make my point as accurate as I could, instead of using my own wisdom, right? And so I have a chapter there on gratitude, because a lot of people, the younger generation, lacks gratitude. Of course,
they need an attitude of gratitude.
Prayer, marriage, of course, marriage, and also we were talking about this today on how then shall we educate our children? Public school, homeschool, what do we do? So I make that chapter is probably the longest, because we're going to make or break our next generation on how we educate them, and so I spent a lot of time on that. I spent a lot of time on how to manage our money. I even have a section in there in case that they want to go into business. How do you start a business? It's a short chapter, but I just want it in case that they do. What are your 4 or 5 key leading indicators? And then also, if you're going to invest in stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, here's 6 things you need to ask your stockbroker. So I wanted to make things very practical too. And then I also have a chapter there on morality versus immorality, virtues versus vices. And then I close it up with Solomon's wisdom, who had everything: wine, women, song, and money.
Sounds like a great country and western song.
Yeah. And what is the whole duty of man? And he
Yeah.
sums it up to fear God and obey His commandments. And so, again, it's written out of love to my kids and the grandkids to give them the best possible advice. And I did it strictly for them.
Yeah.
And then it was suggested to me I ought to turn it into a book, because right now there's a lot of angst going on in America through, the pandemic that we had and all the other things that are going on, which we're on shaky ground. And so I think it's a timely book that parents should read.
Yeah. Well, it's about 40 days before it comes out, and how would folks, don't be careful there, how would folks find the book, The Road to Restoring the Family?
A couple of things. In 40 days, you can call me
Okay.
and order it
He
through
did
me.
give you his cell number right on air.
And you can do the email, and it should be available on Amazon in 40 days. But preferably, just so I know, email me, and we'll work it out that way.
And what is the cost of the book, Senator?
$18.99.
Obviously, you're a capitalist.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a capitalist. Yeah, and for every 1,000 books you buy, you get the second one for free.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
no, that's good. That's a deal.
And hey, by the way, I have had a guy lay out $1,000 to buy a bunch of books just because he read the first 3 pages of this book, and he wants to pass those books out to their people. So
wonderful.
That was a kind of a blessing for me, and an encouragement that somebody would lay down that much cash to buy this book.
How many pages is this book? Just so I know that I can actually read it.
211, and there's not too many pictures in it.
Oh, man.
So I apologize to you for
Man.
that. It's all good content, though.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, all I can tell you is I'm really interested in my picture Bible nowadays.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, thank you, former State Senator Mike Morrell, a representative here of the state of California, for coming on to Politics in the Pulpit today. Again, his book, The Road to Restoring the Family, Leaving an Inheritance to Our Children's Children, is due out in about 40 days. You can, again, if they wanted to get a hold of you, again, one more time with your email.
P as in Paul, RHL at AOL.com.
Amen. Well, thank you again, Mike Morrell, for joining us today. Don't forget, next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, we will have Valerie Bradford with the Santa Clarita chapter of the NAACP. As far as I know, she's coming on live in studio. We are going to have a spirited yet respectful conversation about race, about Christianity, about the NAACP, both past and present, and talk a little bit about some of the weird things that have happened here racially, just within our school district here in the last couple of weeks, with some video and a few other things that were posted here recently in our high school. If you're out there driving around, you be careful, as it's raining in places, I know. And at some point, Lord willing, the rain will stop, the winds will stop, the snow will cease, and we'll actually see some wildflowers and get back to what Southern California is supposed to look like. If you're interested in a good school, don't forget Lighthouse Christian Academy. And if you're interested in a good church where woke Christianity goes to die, don't forget freedomswaybaptistchurch.com, soon to be .org. And again, you're listening to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. We'll catch you next week. Take care.